meeting of the Infrastructure Services and Networks Committee meeting. It's 1 o'clock and therefore we can start. We've got a quorum. Thank you all for your attendance. There is no public forum today. I have received apologies from Councillor Vandervis and Councillor Newell. I'll happily move that. Seconded, Councillor Lord. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. You're moving, and seconded. Thank you, Councillor Staines. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I haven't got on my agenda sorry, that should have had confirms the agenda with the following alteration, which is in regard to standing order. I presume that was included in your motion. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any changes? Councillor Wiley.
Yeah, Madam Chair, due to the announcement last week from OMV, I have returned as spokesperson for Progress Otago.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure that they're both mutually one and the same effect, but that's fine. Any other declarations? Thank you. With that amendment, I'll move that we note that the amended elected members' interest register attached as attachment A and confirm the proposed management plan for elected members' interests. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Mr Bainbridge.
It's not always just the right term.
Oh, timing is everything. Very.
I was waiting outside.
Would you like to talk to your report?
No, happy to go straight to questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Lord, Councillor Wiley
I've got one. Look, can you just, I read it in the report on page 2, but I just couldn't quite work out the page 16 of 81. I was just struggling to see the difference between investment and commercial portfolios.
It's purely an sorry. Yeah, there we go. It's purely an accounting thing. There's no difference at all in the way we manage them, but because at some point in the past we called these properties investment properties, we need to value them every year. They don't depreciate, they're just whatever value they are that year. And they're treated slightly differently for accounting purposes.
So just what I'm trying to understand though is what would determine which, like say for example the Bunnings and Porirua, would that be investment or commercial?
It's in the investment portfolio.
And say for example the likes of Wall Street?
Wall Street's in the investment portfolio as well.
Yeah.
It's endowment.
It's in the investment. It has endowment status, but it's in the investment.
Okay. So what would be in the commercial portfolio? Is that buildings, for example, that we, like a library or something like that? Is that the difference? No.
So in the commercial there will be some other office and retail space that we may have elsewhere. Some of the shops downstairs, I guess, at the bottom of the Civic Centre would be kind of commercial shops. Some of the other things we have out in the peninsula, we've got a few retail units out there that would be kind of commercial space.
Yeah. No, that's all right. Thank you.
Cool.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Just asking questions. I noted in paragraph 47D there was a mention of Palmyra having insulation work being done. And that led me then to look at what else was happening in the property department in the sense of, would all our GCC housing be classified as healthy homes?
Yes, so at the moment, everything except Palmyra meets the criteria, and Palmyra will meet the criteria by 1st of July.
Okay, so all will have the insulation done effective as of July?
Yes.
July 1st?
Yep.
Okay, and another question, Fortune Theatre. I noted we had a list of different buildings that we have work being done. Is there any update on what's happening with the Fortune Theatre?
At the moment, we're just maintaining it as best we can while we review our options for it, and then we'll come to council in due course with a recommendation on where we go with it.
Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following on from Councillor Wiley's question about insulation, paragraph 15 talks about double glazing. This is the comments from respondents around the housing not meeting their needs, and it talks about double glazing and improved heating. Do we have to wait till people vacate a property before we do that work? Is that generally what happens, and is that the obstacle to getting that work done?
No. Some of our units, quite simply, the walls aren't thick enough to take double glazing, so some of them aren't able to be double glazed effectively. So where we can do it, we're working through a program of doing it. Sometimes we do it when there's a void or changeover. Sometimes we don't deem it necessary. Depends how much sun it gets, depends where it is.
Thank you. And going on to paragraph 25, which was the people on priority 1. And look, this may have been covered in, forgive me if it was covered in the report and I missed it, but 50% have declined an offer of housing. For what reason? Do you know why?
Yeah, typically it's geographical, so we don't provide emergency housing, so the people on our waiting list are already in a home somewhere, and quite often they'll say, I only want to live in Port Chalmers, or I only want to live in Mosgiel, so they'll get offered something and it won't be suitable for them. So the most common reason is geographical. Sometimes it's too small. We have residents who go on a waiting list because they want to downsize, and then when they see the size of our units, they don't want to downsize quite that far.
Thank you for that explanation. And finally, on page 25K, that's 47K, Peninsula Cycleway, the continuing land acquisitions for the completion of the Peninsula Cycleway connection next steps. Is that quite a significant kind of project in terms of, or are there just little bits and pieces?
It's quite a significant project. It's being managed by external consultants, though some of the property team, the property advisor, kind of manage and monitor the project as a whole. So it takes up a decent amount of her staff time, but yeah, there's still a fair way to go there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Dave, for your report. A question around investment occupancy rates and the difference between target and actually presently. Can you just catch us up on that?
Yes, also we're at kind of 91% there. We've had a tenant recently vacate one of our units on Moray Place, but we'll have that refilled by May.
Cool.
And then there's a couple of partially vacant units on Parry Street, and then the 2 units on the top of 54 Moray Place, on top of the car park on the bunker. They're still undergoing compliance works, so until the compliance works are complete, we can't re-tenant those.
Oh, thank you for that.
Cool.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just further to Councillor Gary's question about the waiting list, how does that work, the 50%? You said that they decline mostly for geographic reasons. Do they then stay on the priority list, or do they get demoted and give someone else a shot?
No, they stay on the list. So we met with MSD recently, who obviously provide emergency housing, and if you turn down an offer from them, they will stand you down off the waiting list for a period of 13 weeks. We don't do that. So we just take into account what the person is looking for, that they want to be in a particular area or they're looking for a certain thing, and we just make sure we've got that recorded so that we're only offering them something that they would think is suitable.
So have you given any thought to actually compartmentalising the applications so that people apply for a particular area, so that would that work, or would that be unnecessarily cumbersome?
We keep a pretty good record of people's preferences. We ask them to list kind of 2 or 3 geographical areas that they'd prefer, but sometimes they've got their eye on a specific street. Maybe they want to be the neighbour of someone.
Okay. Thank you. And one more. In paragraph, in 46 on page 23, G rather, you talk about the municipal chambers and the work that's being assessed. Does that include giving some attention to the pigeon fouling that happens out the front?
Yeah, so that at the moment or previously has been cleaned quarterly. We'll look to increase that. We think that's increased because of the work that's going on has disturbed the birds and where they would normally be. So it's been a lot worse over the last few months since the scaffolding's been up.
While I'm not suggesting that the birds should be poisoned, I note that the spikes that stop them roosting on all those surfaces have been removed for some time. Was there any particular reason for that?
I wouldn't know the history of that. We're looking at introducing bird scarer devices to stop them roosting that have been used quite successfully at the stadium. So we've been working with DVML on how they've introduced that. But it may well be that we look at reintroducing spikes or something like that.
Thank you.
Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr Bainbridge. Just going back to 15 on page 17, the various things that we might do to improve properties. Can you confirm that those are not always required of us, that there are some things we do like double glazing and presumably wet area showers, etc., that we do because we want to improve the quality of the properties, but that there's no regulatory or legislative requirement that we do those?
Absolutely correct, yeah. All of our homes comply with the Healthy Homes legislation, things like wet floor showers for people with accessibility issues, mobility issues are more preferred to shower over bath. So we'll look to introduce those where we can. Double glazing, again, depending on the sunlight, maybe more necessary, more valuable than in other locations, but they all comply, they're all up to standard.
Thank you.
Councillor Steadman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Mr Bainbridge. Just back to 15 again, following up Councillor Gary's things on the double glazing, you said that the walls weren't thick enough?
Yeah, you could retrofit them internally, but to put a new unit of double glazed windows in there, we don't think the wall's thick enough to take the additional. They're very thin in one of our particular units in Green Island. It's a challenge for us. They weren't fantastically well constructed.
Do your people in property services, do they look at other options rather than doing the retrofitting or anything like that, like films, etc., when they're looking at because there's different, obviously, other options that I've heard of from overseas and stuff that we can actually get here, and they're actually about 94% as efficient.
Yeah, we're looking at a range of options for some of our more challenging units where the easy solution isn't possible. So yeah, we're looking into that.
Any other questions? I have just one. First comment is congratulations on the Dunedin Housing Summit and your role, or the department's role in that. It was a fantastic event. But the energy audits, and I appreciate it's in your report, it's something that you're going to be looking at in this quarter now. Are you expecting to have some savings, investor save projects coming in there that will be able to be funded in the current budgets?
Yes, so ECA, the Energy Efficiency Council Authority, I think, or a central government funded, they provide some funding depending on the return on investment period for the recommendations. So yeah, we'd expect there to be a number of things. Toy 2 has been a fantastic example of energy saving. We've saved about 200k a year on our energy bills at Toy 2 with some really good work from the guys down there. So we would hope the bigger buildings, Civic Centre and the Public Art Gallery, there'd be some good opportunities to make some savings there as well. So
the reason I'm asking that, we're going to an annual plan. You will have the sufficient money in foreseeable that you think to make those savings in the current budgets, or will you be coming to us at annual plan? Will those reports be available for annual plan?
We've only got them in the last kind of 2 weeks, so probably not. But it depends on the recommendations and how much funding is provided by ECA and how much funding we would need to put in ourselves.
The question then, perhaps for Ms Graham, is do we still have an investor save budget in the annual plan now? I can't recall.
No, but ELT are looking at investor save options to inform next year's annual plan. Okay. So this will feed through into that.
Thank you. I'll happily move that note the report if there are no other questions. Seconded, Councillor Hawkins. Any discussion or debate? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Parks and Recreation Activity Report for the quarter ending 31st of March. Welcome. Yes. Welcome, Mr. McLean, back to the table. I don't think you've been here this time. You've been, no. Nice to have you back. Hello, John. Do you want to speak anything, say anything to the report, or are you happy just to take questions?
No, take questions.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Gary?
Thank you for the report, and I just wanted to thank you for the work done on Tauroni and Wellers Rock. I was interested in if you had any more to say, just to expand the note about the work being done at Wellers Rock.
This one's one I've been working on. So yes, we have made some progress. The major problem there has arisen from people parking their boat trailers and their cars while they're off in their boats, and so one of the options we're looking at is a site nearby, about 100 metres away, that we might be able to lease for some car parking, boat trailer parking, and that's looking very promising at the moment, and so within the next couple of weeks we'll know whether we're able to move forward on that. So, yeah.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. My first question is on 2C about Hancock Park. Is this the second part of the field going to be done at any time?
Through the Chair, there are no immediate plans to do the second half of the field. The reason the two fields that were had the work undertaken were done was because of the proposed amalgamation of facilities with Caversham football, and it was deemed that the playing surface was not up to spec for football. So.
Okay. Because it has come up pretty well. Are you also looking after the rugby season and other fields being done in a similar manner?
Through the Chair, we have a program of renovation works. We prioritise those. Sometimes it's a little bit reactive, depending on the wear and tear from the previous season. So, but yeah, we prioritise where required.
Okay. Mosgiel Pool, the Aquatic Facilities Advisory Panel has been disbanded, and the Mosgiel Aquatic Project Team has been established. ACOM Consultants, are they a local company or?
I'll speak to that through the Chair. They are currently establishing an office in Dunedin, so they've had a couple of people seconded into ORC for a long time, so they've had 2 or 3 staff in town for approximately a year or two, and there's a project manager from ACOM that managed the bus hub works, and they're committed to establishing an office in the next year, so they'll probably have 4 to 6 staff here in the next year.
And have they got a history in building and managing these type of projects?
Oh yes, certainly. They're a multinational player. They've global reach, and they have significant resource in New Zealand.
So they're used to building aquatic facilities, is what I'm asking.
Yes, they have expertise in building aquatic facilities.
Okay, thank you. I sent this question through earlier to Sandy Graham. Ms. Graham, just following up the email regarding, I attended the Sport New Zealand meeting in Wellington on Friday, and the issue around lifeguards and training going forward.
Do you have an answer, dear?
Microphone.
I'm telling everyone else off. So Nicola says that we are keeping a watching brief on what's happening as the PLPC, which is the Pool Lifeguard Practicing Certificate, is a national qualification, and we are interested in what is being progressed. The Pool Lifeguard Award used to be done through the Royal Life Saving Society, and then NZRA took over. So we're taking a watching brief at the moment.
Okay, just to bring the other councillors up to the speed with what I'm talking about, is with the merger of the polytechs, a lot of the training is done through polytechnic organisations around the country, and Recreation New Zealand, Recreation Aotearoa made a presentation at the Sport New Zealand meeting, and one of the comments they walked away with us to look at was the fact that after July 1 there could be a lack of coordination and education of lifeguards, and in some cases there'll be a shortage of people coming into the lifeguard practice and being able to stand at our pools. So there was a concern from Recreation Aotearoa how that would facilitate or work through our swimming pools around the country.
Nicola's not concerned at our ability to adequately staff the pools at the moment, but we are taking a keen interest in how this plays out.
Councillor Hawkins.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's a question around something that isn't raised specifically in the report, which is probably a timing issue, and it's around Moller Park and the now restricted use of that facility due to decisions by the landowner and council ceasing to maintain that privately owned land. And I wasn't aware of the nuance of that arrangement until recently. So my question is, are there any other significant recreation assets that are privately owned but publicly maintained in the way that Ravensdown land has been?
We don't have Owen with us. He would probably be able to answer immediately, but I would have to go and check. We're not aware, we three are not aware of any.
Strathtorey A&P Society Showgrounds would be one.
There's one. So I'm not aware. We'll go back and check.
Yeah, could we get a list of any that do exist?
Certainly.
That was a surprise to me, so thank you.
You note that, Jenny? Thank you.
Thank you. We might add that to the list of notification under the chair just to ensure that it is carried through properly. Thank you. Councillor Benson Pope.
Thank you. Two questions in relation to, in the first case, Thomas Burn Street. Thank you for the initiative, which seems to have been really very successful. If we were to ask the residents of Warrington and Ocean View if the pressure had really been taken off, would they echo your view in the narrative here?
Yes, I believe they would. Yes.
Great, well done. The other one is the next item in respect of the beaches and reserves bylaw. Obviously, we're all aware of the delay for various reasons. After that subcommittee met and came down with the current regulations, but I'm reading, the message seems to be there is still an issue with vehicles on beaches in particular. So I'm just really wanting some comment about, that's a bit more elaborate than that, about the signs, how many of them are walked and are walking, how adequate they are, and how much monitoring we're going to do, not so much in the colder months, but that too, but especially towards the end of the year when the weather picks up again.
Yep. Signage is a major issue for us. What appears to be the issue is there's a lot of signage and a lot of signage that's perhaps out of date. And so what we're doing in this working party is actually going to each site and doing a tailor-made plan for each one, so that, and we're doing it, trying to do it in a more graphic way, so that we sort of have maps which show where you can and can't go. But trying to make the message a lot simpler, so you can see straight away that you're not allowed to have a vehicle on a beach, or you are allowed to launch a boat, etc. And so the plan is to go and do a specific plan for each site and take away all the redundant signs and try and get as much information onto one single piece as possible.
That sounds really good, and you sort of alluded to it, but the other issue is is what's escaped me entirely. Oh, the membership of the working party. That community board people and locals, site by site, I assume, is it?
That's right, yes. Yeah,
great.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's actually right back to the Logan Park artificial turf and the ancillary landscaping work, which is on track. Happened to be down there today, and the berm that looks to be built, and I acknowledge it's in the middle of construction, so it may get smaller, but at the moment on Union Street you can't see anything past that berm. Is it supposed to be that tall?
Through the chair, I believe it's being made to specification. Yep.
Are those the specifications that were in the resource consent, or the ones that came to the council for the decision? I think that's probably where you're coming from.
To me, it looks like it's over 2 metres high at the moment, so I'm just wondering, is it going to end up being that tall? Because it's pretty big at the moment.
I can't answer that with the final. I know I was down there also this morning, and they were still doing a lot of shaping and scraping, so it may, I don't know what the final height will be.
I acknowledge that, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Elder. Sorry.
Chair. Just a couple of questions. With the freedom camping, you employed some people to pop around and check in and give people comms about how long, etc. How did that go?
It went very well, yes. It turned out to be a two-way interaction, so as well as sort of informing them about where they could and couldn't stay and things like that. And they did give information about, you know, you can only stay for 2 days before 8:30. There was surveys that were dropped off and in some cases filled out while they were there. I think the interaction was very positive. Yeah, I think it was a good way of taking the heat out of a lot of situations. So yeah, I think it worked very well.
And did that also, I mean, as a process, were those people informing people about what they could do in Dunedin, etc., etc.?
They tended to, yes, because of the nature of what we asked them to do was we didn't want them to be confrontational. We wanted them to be passing on information and just letting them know things. So there was quite a lot of conversation about Dunedin itself, and I think it was more of a friendly approach. So yes, I think there was a lot of information passed on about Dunedin.
The other question is just the development of tracks levels provision project plan and also the play spaces level of provision project plan. Congratulations on those. I was just wondering what the process is, that was all. What the process is for this plan.
Okay, so the sort of a working party has been set up to provide the sort of ongoing kind of monitoring of it. So that's got various people. For example, with the tracks one, we've got the likes of Anthony Hamill, who's quite well known, and also Mike Morrison from DOC, and he was responsible for writing the tracks. There's a tracks manual. He was instrumental in doing that. But a lot of it is around auditing what we've already got, doing condition assessments, looking at facilities, the standard of them and things like that, and then suggesting a way forward after we've done all that background information checking.
Thank you.
Councillor Lefiso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it working? Thank you for deputising in Mr. West's absence. I am raising again a matter that I raised at committee level with Mr. West about the Ned Street playground and disability access. Is it scheduled in terms of a work program?
I will have to check, but if Jenny can take a note of that, I'll make sure that we follow up and get back to you directly.
Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up Councillor Elder's question around the Freedom Camping site at Thomas Burns Street. In that surveying, or in the observations of, for want of a better word, the educators, was there a sense that people who were camping there would then go into town of an evening and enjoy the hospitality of the city?
Yes, definitely. What we're finding is that the Thomas Burns site's hugely popular for exactly that reason. You know, a lot of these freedom campers in the past have had to go to these outskirts, and while it's lovely and it's, you know, there's cheap and there's plenty of things to do, what they really want is to be able to interact with the city centre. Yeah, and that's a huge feedback that we've got.
So I don't think this is very well known, and that's why I was wondering whether that was part of the survey at all. Do we have figures on that?
Yes, it was. There was questions about what do you do, what do you spend your money on, those sorts of things. So I can find out.
That would be really
helpful.
helpful.
We'll be summarising all that at the end of the Freedom Camping season.
Thank you.
There will be a report summarising the season. It will be part of that.
Any other questions? I have one. Mr McLean, the comment that you made before that you've got priority lists, I'm just wondering if those priority lists for park redevelopment are publicly available so that people who use those parks can have an idea of when work may be likely to happen on them? Or are they just in-house reports?
They're just a work program for sports fields.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably no reason we couldn't make them publicly available, but I don't think they'd be in the format that would facilitate that just yet, but that's certainly, we'll take that feedback on.
Thank you. And just in relation to paragraph 10, the notice of requirement, just wondering if the appeals time is now up. I'm not quite sure if it would be, and what that is happening there.
Yes, it was last Friday and we got no appeals.
Thank you. There'll be some relief to Irene and amongst others. Very good. Thank you. No one else wishes to. I'll move the report be noted. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Elder. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Mr Saunders, welcome. Starting off with proposed road stopping Sligo Terrace. Do you wish to comment on your report? Or Mr Tannock's report? Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hawkins.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's a question for all of these papers, really. Is there any particular reason why the applicants aren't named in here? I just found it difficult from a managing conflicts of interest point of view to know whether I knew these people or not. I mean, I've found them on the rates database, but it's somewhat arduous.
I think they probably think it's an in-principle decision. Yeah.
What?
No. Yeah.
I'll just appreciate being able to withdraw from an item involving an applicant.
I'll follow that up with the governance team just to see. I can't answer that. I've never seen them on a report, but I can certainly ask the question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Elder.
Just a quick question. So we've got a number of variances, and I was just wondering, why do these kind of things happen when people know where the boundaries are, etc.? Or do they?
Look, there can be a number of reasons. Often, if a property goes up for sale and people are doing the title research and looking at aerial photography, they'll see that the boundaries not necessarily lining up with what's constructed on the street. So that can be a reason. Building consents are another one where the Building Act requires everything to be within one title, so they can get caught out there. So it's usually driven by the property owners who find out that they have potentially a boundary issue, and then we work with them to find the best solution to rectify it for them.
Councillor Gary.
I was just curious, Mr Saunders, why there was a flurry of these, because it seemed like these were suddenly a spike.
No, look, we've got a number on our books, but the work required to get reports through, and I think Mike was heading away on leave and wanted to make sure they didn't stay in the system any longer than they needed to.
Councillor O'Malley.
It's not really a question, but a request. Would you be able to circulate to the councillors the policy around the valuation when you do a valuation for these stoppages? Thanks. Great.
I think it's a policy and an act.
Well, actually, in the context of its relationship to, say, Christchurch, Wellington and Auckland's policies as well. But, well, I mean, I'll look at them and compare them. Thank you.
I'll have a chat to Dave Bainbridge and find out what the best information we can to bring it back to you.
Any further discussion? Anyone like to move? Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Hall, seconded. Do you want to speak to your report, your motion? Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Proposed road stopping Wilmot Street and Harbour Terrace, Kerry's Bay. Councillor Lord? Willing to move. Any questions of Mr Saunders first? Moved, seconded. Councillor Stedman? Do you wish to speak to your motion? Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Proposed road stopping unnamed road off King Street, Evansdale. Do you wish to comment on this? Any discussion? Move. Can I just ask one question of it? There are various adjoining neighbours in this one. It's slightly more complex. Just checking when in the report where it says that neighbours have been consulted, then they're all of the neighbours or just the neighbours who have who may have an interest in it, because there are some. Was everyone given the opportunity to say, "I'll take a wee bit of this," or does it make sense with the existing fences?
Look, I don't have the details of exactly who was consulted, but I know that we're comfortable that the person who has made the application is the most suitable one to take, to amalgamate that within their title.
Titles, I think there's
titles,
three.
titles,
Yep.
sorry, three
Yep.
titles, yes.
Okay, no, that's cool. Thank you. So moved, seconded. And it's been done. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And then naming of new private way off Burgess Street, Green Island. A suggestion that it be Rex's Way with an apostrophe. Do you wish to speak to this? Councillor Gary?
Question. So are there many examples where an apostrophe is used? Obviously it's grammatically correct, but do we have many instances around the city?
I'm not aware of any, so I don't have the answer. There may be, but certainly because it's a private way would be the reason we've considered that in this case it could be appropriate. If it was a full public road, we may have recommended something different.
Any other questions? I'll happily move. Seconded, Councillor Steadman. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Naming of new private way off Henderson Street, Wingatui. Thank you, Your Worship. Anscombe Close. Any discussion? Sorry, seconded. I'll second. Oh, it's Councillor Staines. Any discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And last matter on the agenda, apart from items for consideration, addition of 2 new names to the road naming policy, the Polish settlers in Pomerania. Mouthful. Any questions? Moved, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wiley. How did you say that? Someone told me of this thing. Okay, I'm learning. Thank you. All in favour? Oh, sorry. Discussion. Sorry.
I just wanted to comment on this because what councillors may not know is that on the peninsula there's the southernmost Polish church in the world, and I've certainly become aware of the significance of the Polish settlers to Dunedin, and we quite often have a visit from the ambassador who's coming very soon, I believe. So I think this is a really welcome addition and will be very much welcomed by the Polish members of our community.
Are you wishing to retract the bit about the Mosgiltari Plains and having it anywhere in Dunedin because of that?
Yes, I would.
I'll ask the mover and seconder whether they agree to that. Yes, okay, well, we'll have another question first.
Sorry, may I ask about that, please? I've previously been involved with the Polish settled Polish society as well, and I wondered when I was reading the paper about the spread of the application of the name, because I had the understanding that most of the Polish settlers were focused on Allenton in the early days, and I wanted to ask about how confident. I've had a look on their documents and elsewhere, how confident staff are about the wider spread of Polish workers right throughout the Taieri and indeed elsewhere. I mean, I think it's a great initiative. I agree with what's being said, but I'm just not sure how widely it should be applied for those historical reasons.
Look, I don't think staff have a firm view on that. We'd be happy to take guidance from council. We were responding really to the request that came from the society, but certainly if there is a desire to remove that restriction or appropriate locality on the name and make it Dunedin wide, there's no issues from a staff perspective in doing that.
The mover is happy. The seconder, Councillor Hall. Was it Wiley? Okay. Oh, sorry. But with that retracted to the. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments on that? So the motion is without the limiting it to the Mosgiltari Plain. I understand it. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Items for consideration by the Chair which have not already been noted? None? Thank you very much for your attendance. That is a record time for our meeting. Thank you very much.